This is my name.
Bu sizinki mi?
Bilmiyorum.
Tamam.
Thank you.
This is
Bir saniye. Sizinki de bu.
This is mine.
Kontrol biraz kaydıralım isterseniz. Buyurun.
Okay.
Hi, how are you? Venezuela. Oh, my pleasure.
To move to? To move there?
Ukrainian minister is coming in 1 minute, they say.
So should we wait? Okay. Hello, hi. Thank you. Okay, good afternoon. We're told we're in the midst of an energy transition, but is it so? Historically, generally, energy transitions were sparked by a technological change or commercial change. For instance, due to major oil discoveries, illumination, lighting moved from whale blubber to oil, and moved transportation from horses to combustion engines to oil. Later, coal heating was moved, a lot of heating from coal to oil. Widespread discoveries of natural gas around the world moved power generation in many places from coal and oil to natural gas, and petrochemicals as well from oil to natural gas. However, this time, there is no technological or commercial trigger for the energy transition. It's coming from expectation of publics, primarily in the West, from their governments. Public sentiments and demands on government are the trigger for this energy transition, and not technological or commercial change. This creates a unique situation where governments are expected to keep the lights on, to provide reliable energy supplies, and at a cost acceptable to all of our citizens, and at the same time, change the system completely. The Biden administration and many elements in the EU have bet on electrification to meet all of these goals. Electrification has many benefits, but it also creates huge challenges, including geopolitical challenges. It means moving from an energy system where the US, for instance, is the top producer of oil and natural gas in the world, to a system where China is relevant as the main holder of reserves of relevant minerals and rare earths. Electrification policy also reduces diversification, which we've always been taught that diversification is an important element in energy security. It wants to go from less inputs into the fuel mix from more, contradicting what generally is our policy. Electrification also makes our energy systems much more vulnerable to cyber attacks and to more extensive ones due to the greater interconnection of wider systems. The post-COVID world, instead of creating actually conditions for an energy transition, have actually created higher demands for fossil fuels with higher consumption of plastics. Look even at this conference with every little apple, banana, cookie wrapped in plastic, the use of medical equipment, of disposable medical equipment, and also lower demand for public transportation. As people have gone back to work, they're afraid to take the metros or afraid to take buses, and we're seeing a huge rise in buying of cars and buying of used cars and buying of used car parts. So if anything, the COVID challenge has not reinforced an energy transition. We get very conflicting messages from the international agencies that are responsible for international energy security. So for instance, about a month ago, the International Energy Agency releases a scenario where it tells us net 2050, we need to stop all investments in oil and gas. 2 weeks later, we're seeing the rising demand for oil and the lack of investments in oil. The IEA is calling for OPEC and Russia and others to open the tap. So completely contradicting. By the way, the IEA calling for to stop new investments in oil and gas is probably similar to someone who wants to diet saying, maybe we should stop production of food. There could be a less risky way to do that. Energy prices are very high right now. The WTI, the US oil price, is at its highest since October 2018. Brent is at its highest since April 2019. LNG is at its highest, liquefied natural gas, at its highest seasonal rate since 2014. Newcastle coal, 120 per ton, a 10-year high. EU power, highest seasonal since 2008. It doesn't sound like there's lack of demand for energy. To discuss these challenges, how in their governments do they navigate between the public demands for an energy transition and the actual needs of energy systems? We have a really robust, incredibly talented panel, and I'm very happy to be a part of it. So I'm going to start with opening with questions to our panelists, and then an opportunity for all of you to join in. So if I may give the first question to Dr. Kneissl, is an energy transition actually taken place, or is it a policy aspiration which is not yet grounded in a true transformation?
Thank you very much, Professor Schäfer. I particularly enjoyed your introduction because you put right the finger on the hot points, I would say. We are currently in a phase of complete uncertainty about where the fuel will come from, what the grid, what the infrastructure will look like. This massive boom or envisaged boom for electrification, transition of mobility inter alia requires an infrastructure that is not there. It's particularly not there in a country like Germany. In about 10 years ago, when the German government announced, against the backdrop of the Fukushima nuclear disaster, the German energy transition, actually it was an electricity transition. It was 30% of German energy consumption as a total. What was needed was a mobility transition, and this mobility transition is currently underway. So it's all about what happens to the internal combustion engine, what happens to an 8 million employment industry, the automotive industry. It also means, of course, for the oil-producing and gas-producing countries, which are facing, for instance, right now, a European Central Bank that acts, I would say, beyond its mandate by going into concrete recommendations about which loans to be sold on the market. It's a bit in contradiction with the mandate of neutrality. So here we see a mix of, I would say, more emotional than rational actions. And it's very unclear to detect what will all that lead to. So this energy transition that is currently underway is, as you very rightly pointed out in your introductory remarks, it's one that is pushed by society, a demand from a certain political strain. I would even go further and say it's more emotional than really underpinned by empirical and technical facts, because we are facing right now an underinvestment in energy infrastructure. We are facing a price cycle that could still become important for an inflation and galloping inflation. And we are facing, above all, the increasing problem of energy poverty. Affordable energy is not only anymore a problem of countries in the southern hemisphere, as we usually discussed it, it's a problem for many households inside the European Union as well.
Thank you very much. Foreign Minister Montserrat, the next question to you. Several recent developments in recent weeks indicate a trend of activism that will make it harder and harder for oil and gas companies to operate in the US and Europe. The Biden administration has put a freeze on exploration licenses on federal lands. The climate activists have joined the board of Exxon. A Dutch court ruling is obligating Shell to reduce emissions and more. Yet demand for oil and gas is not declining, as witnessed by the recent price trends. Is there a commercial and geopolitical opportunity for oil and gas companies and countries outside of Europe and the US, such as in Venezuela?
Yes, thank you so much. Well, in the first place, I do consider that there's a transition happening, but in certain countries, not in all, because of the inequality of the system. And as the prior speaker said, the poverty that energy is generating, the energy poverty, is getting worse day by day. Now, there's a new energy periphery and also centers of that are accumulating all the technology, all the investment. About, as you said, this is a transition, but you cannot order it. You cannot make a decree and make it happen. No? This is going to take several decades, and oil and gas will be used for several decades, not only in the global south, but in all the world. I believe even for the south it's even more difficult, because which is the option? Or you have the option to move towards new technologies, green technologies, and you have to pay for them, so you have to produce debt, or you have to keep on using not only oil, even carbon in some places of the world. So it's not an easy map. It's not easy to predict what's going to happen, but it's really clear that there is inequality, that the countries from the southern part of the world have no access to these technologies. They have no funds to have access to the technologies, and it is a matter that concerns all the world. This is not about some countries. This is about all the countries, because energy is from all. Energy is not from Germany or from the US or from Venezuela. Energy is for all of us. No? So we have to make a plan. No? That's why this forum is so important. There has to be a multilateral planification of access to new technologies, production of new technologies, and we have to give the countries that don't have enough funds, the funding in order to access to these new technologies and to prepare for this transition. It's not easy, but I believe that gas and oil will be in use for several decades. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Foreign Minister Kulieva, much of the geopolitical challenges and policies and world interest in Ukraine have focused on Ukraine's access to energy supplies and also Ukraine's role as a gas transit state. Do you think that energy transition provides actually a relief from some of these challenges to Ukraine by providing access to new energy, or the opposite is true, that actually with less focus on the hard geopolitics of oil and gas, some of the challenges of Ukraine will be forgotten by Europe and larger? And what do you see as a prominent transit state of energy? What do you see as the main energy security challenges to Europe and its neighbors?
Good questions. Oh, sorry, good questions. You know, I come from the part of Europe where gas means big politics, where gas is more about security than economy, especially when you look at Ukraine as a country that has been a very reliable transit country for the supply of Russian gas from Russia to the European Union. But wheels of history are turning. And I agree that transition will take years, but it's unstoppable. It will happen anyway. Of course, gas and oil producers and investors are unlikely to facilitate the transition given their current status quo. But the world is evolving. It's moving in the direction of the transition. And of course, for Ukraine, access to alternative sources of energy, especially renewables, became a big relief. Let's say 10 years ago, the part of solar and wind in the Ukrainian economy was almost invisible. And today, it's an important element of our energy balance. When the European Union issued its first strategic documents on the green transition of its economy, it identified Ukraine as one of the potential suppliers of green hydrogen to the EU market. And you know, we are not producing it yet, but the goal is there, the vision is there, and there are many technological issues and handicaps which have to be settled. But again, progress is taking place, it's inevitable. The biggest issue in terms of energy security is, of course, energy cooperation, is, of course, infrastructure. We all know where to get energy from. We all know where we want it to be supplied. The main question is how. And if you approach this matter only from an economic perspective, you get one answer. If politics intervene, you may get a completely different answer, like it happened with the Nord Stream 2, the project that will, the pipeline that will undermine energy security of Europe, which goes against the principle of diversification of energy supply. It's a political thing, it's a political project, the only purpose of which was to bypass Ukraine politically, because economically and strategically it would still make sense to transit gas through the territory of Ukraine. So if you put politics aside, you get one picture. If politics intervene, you get a different picture of energy security and energy cooperation between countries. But this is life, and we all have to accept reality and to change reality in accordance with interests of countries and entire nations. But all in all, to make a long story short, I do believe that new technologies and new energy opportunities, they bring relief to those countries who traditionally dependent on, let's say, old energy.
Okay, thank you. Foreign Minister of Madagascar, Dr. Tehindra Zavnarielvo. Was I even close?
Perfect.
You're very generous. Madagascar has rare earths. Do you sense a new great game emerging for control of rare earths? Many countries taking interest in Madagascar's volumes of rare earths as states promote more electrification and need more of these minerals.
Merci, professeur. C'est un plaisir de me retrouver ici pour discuter de la transition énergétique. La pandémie du Covid-19 nous a... J'attends un peu pour ça. Yeah. Please. Donc la pandémie du Covid-19 nous a amené à repenser notre mode de vie, à adapter notre mode de production. Et à Madagascar, donc, quand la leçon à tirer de la pandémie de Covid-19, c'est qu'on doit s'appuyer sur les ressources que nous avons pour résoudre un problème pressant. Et nous savons tous que la transition énergétique n'est plus une option, c'est une obligation. Et pour Madagascar, cette transition énergétique passe par la réduction du prix de l'électricité, qui est très cher parce que les matières premières pour sa production viennent de l'extérieur. Et c'est ce qui nous a amené donc, à privilégier des investissements dans l'énergie propre pour profiter des ressources que nous avons. Madagascar est une grande île avec 5000 km de côte, 592 000 km². Nous avons du soleil, nous avons beaucoup d'eau et nous avons du vent. Et donc la transition énergétique à Madagascar, c'est de s'appuyer justement sur l'énergie hydraulique, l'énergie éolienne et l'énergie solaire. Et parmi les engagements du président de la République, quand il est arrivé au pouvoir, il y a donc de donner de l'électricité et de l'eau pour la population malgache. Et cela passe donc par le développement de ces nouvelles ressources énergétiques propres. Et actuellement, nous avons des projets pour créer des parcs solaires, par exemple, partout dans l'île, et notamment dans la partie sud, qui est plus ou moins quasi désertique, où nous faisons face, par exemple, à de malnutrition à cause de la sécheresse. Et Madagascar propose de mettre en place des périmètres d'irrigation, mais pour faire face, par exemple, à cet aspect particulier de notre développement, il faudrait justement prévoir de l'énergie, parce que l'énergie est la base du développement, mais pour arriver à ce développement, il faut passer donc, par l'énergie propre, dont Madagascar a beaucoup de potentiel d'investissement à cause, comme j'ai dit, de l'abondance de l'eau, du soleil et du vent. Merci.
Thank you, merci. Just a side note that in preparing for this panel, I was reading a little bit about Madagascar's energy policies, energy consumption, production, electrification, and started looking at beautiful pictures of Madagascar. Decided definitely next vacation spot. Looks like a paradise. Dr. Bayraktar, the Southern Gas Corridor was opened in late 2020 on time and significantly below budget, about 26% below budget. We never hear those kind of words in the energy world. And contrary to so many so-called energy experts prior to the building of the construction of the project, they anticipated that the snags would be in Turkey. In Turkey it would be slow, in Turkey it would be above budget, the TANAP section, and that of course in Europe it would be without a glitch, the TAP part. Yet the reality was completely different. TANAP was built, again, below budget, with every marker on time, while where all the hurdles was in the European section. What's the secret? Why do you understand that strategic infrastructure built in Turkey is easier to do than in Europe itself?
Thank you, Brenda. But if you allow me, I would like to say a few words about the energy transition in general. Because what we are seeing in today's energy world, we are witnessing a significant and unprecedented challenges and changes in the energy world. And it's a good example today that we are discussing energy transition because security of supply centric energy discussions now evolving into a more climate change centric discussions. And now energy transition, green economy, some new buzzwords we have, if you recall it, like a circular economy, decarbonization, carbon neutrality. These are the new buzzwords in our world. And if you ask me, is it happening? Yes, I would say. I mean, 51%, I would say yes, but it is happening very slowly. But somehow, I think we discussed with you in the past, like global warming and climate change is becoming kind of religion, and it's not easy to talk against that kind of phenomenon. But when it comes to the facts and realities and market, it's kind of opposite. And especially after the pandemic, 2020 and this year, millions of people lost their lives, loved ones, they lost their jobs, some small and medium-sized enterprises, they bankrupted. So at this point, that kind of huge developments, you cannot easily to say people, you know what, you cannot consume more because we need to somehow keep carbon emission reduced, etc., etc. So these kind of developments is a little bit like beyond the market realities and facts. Another point, you refer that we are not seeing some technological breakthroughs. Although we are seeing something, especially like the unconventional developments and the gas and oil exploration, and US became like a #1 oil and gas producers, it was a major game changer for energy transition, especially in the US, and then Obama administration took it to the next level and the Paris Agreement came. Now we are seeing Biden administration is following the same steps and even more ambitious and assertive targets they set. But we will see. I mean, there are so many uncertainties in the development on the technology side. We need a new game changer for real energy transition. It could be storage, it could be CCUS, but something one side should be like a more scalable and also more commercial. It should be competitive. When it comes to our story and the TANAP, the gas is quite important for Turkish energy market as well as Turkish economy. We consume almost 50 billion cubic meter of gas each and every year, fourth largest gas market in Europe. And when it comes to household, commercial and industrial consumers, as well as power generation. So we need more gas. The gas is increasing. At the same time, we need to diversify our supply routes and countries. And TANAP is an extremely good example for that. The new source of energy, new source of hydrocarbon coming to Turkey, and for our security of supply, and through Turkey to European market. That's why it was on time, on budget. I'm also the deputy chairman of the TANAP board, so it was a very successful project. If you ask me one single or silver bullet for this project, I would say the political willingness and commitment was the key driver for successful completion of the TANAP. And that's what we need in case if we look other sources of energy around Turkey in the region, like Eastern Mediterranean hydrocarbons. We need, number one thing is political willingness and commitment. And I think the President Erdogan, President Aliyev, and other leaders on the routing countries showed that leadership on that project.
Okay. Thank you. Dr. Kneissl, the EU has put together climate policy and renewable policy, meaning that how do they achieve their climate goals through rising use of renewable energy. But not all renewable energy is green. And in fact, a lot of it is actually has high environmental impact. I could say on a personal note, last week I was at the Iran-Azerbaijan border in areas that had previously been under occupation, the newly liberated territories. And I saw a hydroelectric dam built on the historic, the Araz River. It's an incredible, large river, and it's a symbolically important in the history of the region, and a very important river. And I see this huge hydroelectric dam in this very, very peaceful green area. And you're thinking, what would have been wrong with a gas pipeline? Iran has large gas resources. Azerbaijan has large gas resources. How in this way, but in many ways, the West kind of pushes this idea that you have to have such a certain percentage of renewable, and not really thinking again is green and renewable isn't the same thing. What is your advice, Dr. Kneissl? What should be how do we balance between renewable climate but also keeping things green as well?
Well, first of all, I think we have to admit the fact that there is no such thing as an innocent energy. All kind of energy causes either environmental damage or it causes labor cost, whatever. It needs commodities, every kind of energy form. And we are pushing a bit to the extreme now, this taking a vantage point of certain degrees of global temperature, and through that micro lens we desire to decide everything, while nature protection is much more than that, as you have just quoted with this very particular example. And here I think we need a much broader, much more common sense view of what it means to provide affordable energy that is not that harmful to the environment. Every form of energy will always be harmful. I think any other thinking is utopian thinking. Unrealistic, completely surrealism even. So this approach has to be much more common sense based. And with regard to the many energy policies, and I would even call it energy mentalities inside the European Union, let me give you the very clear reference in the Treaty of Lisbon of 2009. The energy mix is still within the national competence of each member state. So as long as we do not align on what kind of energy mix do we wish to organize as 27 or whatever number this group will have, I think it's also tea leaf reading, because already when you take two countries which I know quite well, I've been teaching in both countries for the last 20 years, and when I teach energy politics in Bonn, the atmosphere in the university room is completely different than when I teach it in Strasbourg or in Paris, because the mentality is a different one when you're in a country where 80% of the electricity production stems from nuclear energy. And the phasing out of Germany from nuclear energy has been received with a lot of surprise, to say the least, by its neighboring countries, because that very decision, which was taken in March 2011, was not at all coordinated with any of the other European Union member states. So we do not anymore, not only that we don't have a single energy policy. We do not even have what I would call a similar energy mentality. Austria is 100% anti-nuclear. We voted on a nuclear station in the 70s. It was never opened up. It's a nuclear museum. France has a different opinion. I mean, really, in any country that you take, the coal issue is a different one in Poland and Bulgaria than it is in Spain. So there is no such thing as one common approach to the energy mix. And this is already the start of the problem. Plus, we have to accept the fact there is no such thing as an innocent energy. The best form is still to not need that kind of energy. So the buzzword, as you correctly said, of energy efficiency. And here also we have seen over the last decades, at least I've seen it in my lifetime, whenever strong energy efficient measures were taken, such as in the aftermath of the oil price crisis of 1973, you have this boomerang effect because what was saved then was wasted on another level. So also the buzzword of energy efficiency does not always lead to the results envisaged for the sake of environment, for the sake of household costs, etc. And what a lot of people also a little bit omit is that any kind of economic activity, free time activities such as social media, such as the Bitcoin industry, just to take a topical issue, requires energy. And here I think it's a lot of people are out of touch with real facts.
Very interesting answer. Thank you. I liked your phrase, there's no innocent energy, and I think that also she pointed out a very important reality that among young people with the great enthusiasm for cryptocurrencies, which is extremely energy intensive, and as you said, sort of needs some knowledge of basic economics, that even if it's run by renewable energy, that means that that's renewable energy that could be used by another sector. It doesn't make it, it doesn't make it, as you said, innocent activity. So thank you. Minister Kuleba, the cooperation between Ukraine and Turkey has deepened significantly in the recent 2 years, please share with us your analysis of the geopolitical implications of this cooperation with the relationship with Turkey, and also are there potential implications for energy flows in Southern Europe as well?
Yeah, we met today with Minister Çavuşoğlu for a short bilateral, and it was so great to sit down and admit the fact that we have no problems to discuss. This happens so rarely in bilateral relations, and I think it's a clear message of how good and deep relations between Ukraine and Turkey are. To our countries, we cover the southern and the northern shores of the Black Sea, and we are two biggest, geographically largest stabilizing forces in the Black Sea region. It's a dangerous place for the time being in particular because of the illegal occupation of Crimea by Russia. But there is enough of stabilizing force in this region, and Ukraine and Turkey are playing that role. We have excellent cooperation with Turkey on virtually every issue, and energy is one of them. Of course, TANAP is an important element of strategic energy stability and diversification in this part of the world. We are looking forward to the opening of the new channel that will connect Black Sea with the Mediterranean Sea, because it will also mean new opportunities for the supply of LNG gas to Black Sea countries. So this is one of those potentials that still has to be realized, and it will happen with time again, because we need time to implement such ambitious projects. Otherwise, I think that the network of energy supply, gas and oil in the Black Sea region, bringing energy from east to the west, is so sophisticated and complicated that that you can implement virtually any kind of combination when it comes to energy supplies. And in that sense, good relations with Turkey and the investment Turkey made in energy diversification is supply is absolutely essential.
Dr. Bayraktar, if he's already brought up the Black Sea, can you tell us a little bit about Turkey's discoveries in the Black Sea and what
Sure.
this means?
Sure. Brenda, as I said earlier, the gas is quite important for Turkish economy. It's a very large amount of gas we are consuming each and every segment of the market. And unfortunately, Turkey heavily relies on imported resources. In terms of primary energy sources, almost 70% of energy comes to Turkey through import. And this is, I would say, single biggest reason that the Turkish economy creates a current account deficit each and every year. Over the last 10 years, in average, Turkey was paying $44 billion just for energy imports. In terms of gas, natural gas, almost entire gas needs comes to Turkey through imports, through pipelines. One of them you mentioned, TANAP, comes from Russia, Iran, and also through LNG. So to reduce our import dependency and to somehow avoid adverse economic impacts of this energy import, 5 years ago, we developed a significant upstream program under the Turkish Petroleum, the state-owned our oil and gas exploration company. And we decided to change a couple of things. We decided to change the main strategy to focus on unconventional technology, but also we developed an offshore program, including Eastern Mediterranean and also Black Sea. We started with Eastern Mediterranean. We drilled 8 wells there. We learned a lot. And then we started, as a second phase, we started Black Sea offshore exploration program. And very successfully, very luckily, very first wells, we announced the largest offshore discovery in the year 2020. President Erdogan announced it. It's 405 BCM, and just recently we added another 135 BCM. So total reserves we announced is 540 BCM. This is the largest discovery in Turkish history, so it's quite significant. And hopefully it's going to produce the first molecule in the year 2023. Very ambitious target, we all know it, but we're trying to achieve that. But most likely the plateau production we're going to reach in 2025 or 2026. And I don't know how it's going to look like our consumption at that time, but most likely 25 to 30% of gas needs for the market will come from that location, that field. And when you look at the broader picture, the area itself is quite prospective and quite promising, actually. These reserve numbers and figures might go up significantly, and then we can talk about this as a game changer for Turkish market as well as for the region. Turkey plays an important role as a kind of providing security of supply for also Europe and Southeast European market, and this could be an also good asset for this region. And we continue to develop the fields around the Sakarya gas field, and we are pretty optimistic about it.
Thanks. Minister Montserrat, the U.S. is likely soon to announce removal of most of the sanctions on Iran. Do you envision a similar move with Venezuela, and that we might see a new stage in relations between Venezuela and the United States, with obvious implications for energy flows?
That's a good question also. You know, the Bolivarian Revolution has been in power for 22 years now. We've dealt with President Clinton, President Obama, Bush, President Obama, President Trump, and it really doesn't matter who is sitting in the Oval Office. It's a system, and sometimes they change the tactics, not the objective. The strategic objective is always the same. Just to let you know, just if I give you some figures, why I believe it's not going to be so easy. Venezuela has been, as you know, a key guarantee of energy for the United States and for the rest of America. Venezuelan proven reserves consist of 303.6 billion barrels of oil, 197 trillion cubic feet of gas, and 731 million tons of carbon. We have also aeolic energy, hydric energy, and of course, that if the capitalist model keeps on trying to grow as it is doing, they need these resources in order to exhaust them also. So it's not going to be easy. But at the same time, we have always reached our hand to the United States. We need foreign investment in Venezuela. The sanctions, so-called sanctions, the coercive or unilateral coercive measures or extortive measures are directed with a political approach. Just as the minister said, you can have a political approach or an economic approach or a geopolitical approach. Why was there an invasion in Iraq? What happened in Libya? Even in Syria? Why was there a coup in Bolivia a year ago? Because in Bolivia, the lithium. Because Iraq, it was not the weapons of mass destruction, it's the oil. Same with Libya. Why are there so many aggressions against Venezuela? Not only sanctions. President Trump threatened our country.
Let's keep it on energy.
Yes, I know, but this is energy also. This is energy. President Trump threatened our government with a military intervention. And what are they looking for? They are looking for the control of the Venezuelan oil, of the Venezuelan gas, especially. We even have some disputes with the neighbors, and transnational energy companies are involved in those disputes. So you cannot separate politics, geopolitics, from energy, and it is important. If the United States wants to have a mutual respect relationship with Venezuela, and they want to invest in the Venezuelan oil, we welcome them. They are most welcomed. If they keep on being aggressive against Venezuela, they just have to know that they will never have any control of the Venezuelan oil. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. My last question will be to the Foreign Minister of Madagascar. So prior to going into government service, you were an accomplished academic in the field of international law and international security. So what do you think are the main threats that affect energy security and general security that the world is overlooking, that we should pay more attention to?
C'est une question, on va dire, difficile et très intéressante. Moi, je dirais que donc, quand on parle de changement climatique ou de transition énergétique, donc, bien sûr, il faudrait être réaliste. Donc, c'est un très long processus. Il ne suffit pas de dire aux gens, bon, maintenant, il faudrait, par exemple, protéger les forêts, il faudrait protéger l'environnement. Il faut aussi faire en sorte qu'ils trouvent leur compte. Et pour des pays en développement comme Madagascar, où, par exemple, il y a beaucoup de populations qui utilisent encore, par exemple, pour leur énergie domestique, le bois de chauffe, le charbon, donc je parle bon végétal. Donc il faudrait leur faire comprendre que s'ils doivent protéger les forêts, s'ils doivent réduire l'émission d'effets de gaz par la protection des forêts, donc il faudrait, par exemple, trouver un moyen de les convaincre. Et par exemple, à Madagascar, nous avons le projet, donc, de commencer par exemple, à vendre le RED+, donc la réduction d'émissions de gaz à effet de serre due à la déforestation. Pour dire que, vous savez, vous pouvez aussi gagner de l'argent en protégeant l'environnement. Par exemple, à Madagascar, si on regarde le forêt primaire à l'est de Madagascar, donc, cela représente 11 millions de tonnes de carbone estimées sur 5 ans, donc, soit l'équivalent de 50 millions de dollars. Donc si on dit aux gens, ne coupez plus le bois à Madagascar, protégez les forêts pour protéger l'environnement, parce que vous pouvez gagner de l'argent aussi à travers ça et avoir de l'énergie. Ça nous permet de développer l'énergie solaire ou d'autres énergies.
Thank you. Thank you. So I'd like to open it up to the audience. Okay, and please stand up and say your name.
Thank you for the conversation. It was a really amazing opportunity to listen to all of you. I'm from Turkey. My name is Yunus Emre. I study in the university at the master degree. My question is going to be for the Deputy Minister, Mr. Bayraktar. Turkey has a long-term strategy to be an energy hub in the international market. But we know that, unfortunately, our natural resources endowment are so low. And unfortunately, as you highlighted, Turkey is highly based on the imported energy. Do you think that Turkey will be able to be kind of a game changer in the energy market? And do you think that Turkey will be capable of to be an energy hub in the international market under these circumstances? Thank you.
I'm going to take like 3 questions and then let them come to the answers. Okay? Yeah, stand up.
My name is Lokman Erkush. I am international relations student in Çukurova University. I guess if I prefer to talk Turkish, I prefer to continue Turkish. Sürekli enerji kaynaklarının kötü kullanımından veya yenilenebilir enerji kaynaklarından bahsediyoruz. Fakat geçmişte çok eskiden gördüğümüz bir dönümlük bir kenevir arazisinin yaklaşık 10 dönümlük bir ağaç ormanına bedel olduğunu görüyoruz. Devletlerin kötü ünlü olmasına rağmen kenevir gibi güzel alternatif kaynaklara yönelme ihtimalleri nelerdir? Bu konu hakkında neler yapmayı düşünüyorsunuz? Veya buna benzer farklı çalışmalar yapacak mısınız? Teşekkür ederim.
Teşekkür. Third question. Shy? Okay. Deputy Minister Bayraktar, I think they're for you.
Thank you. Being an energy hub, I don't want to go into that, but I want to just explain our energy policy objectives and what we're trying to achieve. If you look at 2017, when we announced our new national energy and mining policy, we said we are going to focus on security of supply for Turkey. It includes diversification, it includes localization, use of our local resources, including coal. Unfortunately, we cannot say easily no to coal, but mainly on renewables, integrating more renewables into our energy system, as well as we would like to do this with the private entities and private capital. So we're trying to provide predictability in the market to the investors. For diversification purposes, as we just started in our panel, TANAP, Turk Stream project, we are trying to diversify routes and countries. We are open to any project in the region, including Eastern Mediterranean hydrocarbons, bringing them to Turkey and through Turkey to European market, bringing gas from Iraq to Turkey. And also what we have done over the last 4 or 5 years, in a very short period of time, we invested a lot in our gas infrastructure. We quadrupled our regasification capacity, which is amazing, and it's paid off in a very short period of time, because we saw that the gas trade is moving towards more LNG. And let me give you some figures. In 2018, 22% of gas was coming to Turkey by LNG. 2019, it was 28%, and just last year, it was 31% of gas was coming to Turkey by LNG. And we saw concentration, the supply side of concentration went down very significantly. For instance, US became like a fourth largest supplier to Turkish market. So that kind of action we are taking for diversification purposes as well as competitiveness aspect, because we would like to provide more affordable energy to our consumers, to our citizens. And last 2 points that I can make, renewable integration, very ambitious target for renewables, and including nuclear, and I saved the best for the last, energy efficiency. We are taking a lot of new measures for energy efficiency, and we just announced a National Energy Efficiency Action Plan. We are trying to reduce our primary energy consumption as well as reduce our carbon emissions in the year 2023.
Thank you. Questions? Any questions from the audience? No? So I'll give a minute to each of our participants after Deputy Minister Bayraktar, because you got some questions. So Karim, would your words of wisdom for the group?
For the group, a word of wisdom. It's interesting that energy was not at all a topic when the big theories of economics were written. You don't find it in the Capital of Marx. It's all about labor, capital, soil, because energy was produced by labor. Animal labor, human labor. You don't find it with John Maynard Keynes, even though we were already somehow in the fossil age. There's no mentioning, no reference to energy. And you don't even have to go that far into history. I remember when I first suggested at Vienna University to a topic for a course in international relations on geopolitics of the oil market, people looked at me in the administration and said, we don't really need that. I started teaching the topic in military academies before I could teach it for civilians. The army was much more interested, national defense colleges, than civilian institutions on energy. I mean, people wanted to have everything else, disarmament, environment issues, but not energy. And that was only 20 years ago. We had the events of 2006, 2009, the gas crisis in Europe. Plus, we had then, of course, a rising momentum with the topic that you mentioned in your reference, society pushing for a different approach to the topic of climate change. And what we see now is that for ages, we didn't have a genuine energy policy in most countries. It was only with the oil price crisis in 1973 that countries like Japan, United States, some others developed energy ministries. It was a different story in the Comecon countries. They had the energy ministries, but the topic as such is still highly fragmented in many, many countries. And it's an interdisciplinary something where a lot of people, where a lot of companies, of course, also want to have a say. So what I would plead for, if you ask me for a word of wisdom, is accept the fact that energy is a discipline by its own, that needs administrative political handling by its own, of course, with all the other factors that always are involved, and treat it in a rational way and not in this hyper-emotional way that we are currently facing, because utopia can be dangerous. And we are right now in times where I think that from a Green Deal to a blackout, it's not too far.
Not only utopia can be dangerous, it was mostly the most utopian movements that were the most dangerous and disastrous for the world. Georgi, last 1 minute words of wisdom on energy policy. Any last comments?
Yeah. Le marché de l'énergie à Madagascar est très ouvert, reste ouvert, parce que Donc la demande en investissement donc, à Madagascar reste largement inférieure à l'offre. Et on a parlé tout à l'heure de diversification. Bien sûr que je n'ai parlé que de l'énergie renouvelable, mais à Madagascar, il y a encore du potentiel d'hydrocarbures, il y a du pétrole, on a déjà découvert du pétrole au sud-ouest de Madagascar. Et comme vous savez, le Mozambique a découvert un grand gisement de gaz dans le canal de Mozambique. Et Madagascar, bien sûr, est un État limitrophe du Mozambique. Et donc, nous avons aussi commencé à faire des recherches d'exploration de gaz. Donc, on a besoin d'investisseurs pour cette diversification, parce que la transition énergétique est un processus et qu'on a aussi besoin donc, de développer ces énergies fossiles pour le développement de Madagascar. Et nous offrons des incitations pour les investisseurs, non seulement donc, dans la recherche des hydrocarbures, mais aussi dans l'importation et le développement des énergies renouvelables. Et nous pensons que la répartition aussi des investissements en énergie devrait être faite de manière équitable entre les pays développés et les pays en développement.
Okay, thank you. Mr. Minister? Yeah.
Yes. Thank you so much. No, just I wanted to acknowledge the fact that in this important forum, the energy discipline was considered for one specific panel because, as Professor said, energy is not always given the importance that it should. And it is central. Energy is central in geopolitics, it's central for the survival of a human being, it's central for the survival even of planet Earth. And of course, there are no innocent energies, but there are less innocent energies than others. And that's where we have to choose well in the right direction. And at the same time, I do believe that utopias are needed. There's a Uruguayan, he passed away some years ago, Uruguayan writer, Eduardo Galeano. And he wrote something about utopias, and he said, why are they useful? Why do they exist? Because I walk 3 steps towards utopia, and utopia moves 3 steps further. Then I walk 10 steps towards utopias, and utopia moves 10 steps further. And then he stops and he looks behind and he says, okay, I have advanced 13 steps in the right direction. So I do believe that social pressure is needed, not so emotional probably, but we need to listen to our peoples, and we need to listen to planet Earth also, because it depends on us if we, as a species, and if the planet as a whole may keep on existing, and energy is central in that dilemma. Thank you.
Thank you.
I really like the composition of this panel, and I would like to commend organizers for bringing us all together. I think that the understanding of the world, of any aspect of the world, is always based on facts and perceptions. And facts can be different from perceptions, and perceptions can sometimes prevail. And it is not necessarily the negative, the destructive consequence that perception brings with it. I agree with my colleague from Venezuela. We do need utopias, because utopias can be both destructive but also saving, and we should not drop that down. But we as human beings should build utopias which save mankind and which help us to move forward. And it is this conflict between facts and perceptions about energy that will be the driving force for the change, for the transition. In the end, I think the principle of coexistence will dominate, and all kinds of energy will remain in place depending on the region and on the context where this energy is explored or supplied or applied. So in the end, everything will be fine, but it just depends how difficult will be the path that we are going to take to that destination point.
Thank you. So I'd like to thank our panelists. I think we're able to hear things today, have some debate. Oh, did I skip? In Turkey, I skipped you?
Just 1 minute.
Yeah.
Sorry.
Buyurun.
Sorry, because in our panel it says what future awaits us. I don't want to end up the panel with some pessimistic comments, but I think what future awaits us in energy, unfortunately, uncertainty is waiting for us. And I think we need to visit and work on global energy governance. That's what we need very carefully. We need to visit this. And one last thing is, I think we need also more pragmatic, more committed, and more realistic leadership on energy. And we need to provide a level playing field for industry, business community, and let them to show their creativity and pragmatism and efficiency. Thank you.
Thank you. So I think another example of that we were hearing today, not the standard answers, not the standard analysis. I think people were willing to be very direct and and challenge some of the prevailing conceptions. And I hope as we go home, and I know there's many students in the room, you use the same sort of approach to energy policies. That that we hear a lot of buzzwords, we hear a lot of aspirations, maybe utopian aspirations, but the reality can be a bit or much more challenging. And for us to have good energy policies, we really need to be based on realistic data, realistic trends. So thank you very much to you here in the room. Thank you to the Antalya Diplomatic Forum for hosting us. Thank you for those listening online, and I hope you all have the rest of your weekend is wonderful. Thank you so much.